this guy and this guy, yeah, they're actually the same people. They sure are. And of course I have my facts, so let's break it down. Welcome. I'm Emma, but here you can call me closed captions. This isn't just another horror channel. It's where I give my 2 cents on what films are saying about our fears, society, and just the human condition itself. It's smart, it's spooky, and sometimes it's a little unhinged. So if you're ready to dive into the shadows with me, hit subscribe and the like button, and let's descend together. I said what I said, okay? I said what I said. Bughuul is Peter Pan, and Sinister, like story structure wise, is a tragedy, which I believe it contributed most to its success. But before we get into all of that, I do want to shout out to CZ's World, Legends of History, Coop, and Jacob DeSoto Reviews for having some really great info in their videos, either covering Bughuul or Peter Pan. I am going to link those below so y'all can check them out as well as support their pages. First, we're going to be looking at how these entities are one and the same, and we're also going to look into why this story is a tragedy and why it was so effective. I will be doing a summary of Peter Pan for any of our sheltered friends out there. And no, you little fucking nasties, absolutely not. We will not be recapping the 2003 Peter Pan. If you know, you fucking know, okay? If you know, you fucking know. The way, honestly though, the way that movie actually shaped a whole generation's like type is astronomical. It needs to be studied. It's crazy as hell. And my girls know. If you fucks, you fucks. Okay? That's all I'm saying. We're gonna be looking at the Jay and Barrie original story though, and I will be using snippets from the Disney cartoon version just because that does stay pretty dead on to the actual story. I am going to be mentioning Sinister 2 throughout the video as well, just as a reference to Bughuul's tactics to build my case, as that movie was set in a kid's POV. But I will not be doing a summary of Sinister 2 because we do not have all night, but you will hear me mention it as well as see clips from it. So let's jump into the story. Sinister follows a true crime author named Ellison Oswald and his family who move into a new home in Pennsylvania. Ellison, struggling with recent unsuccessful book releases and a scandal that let a killer walk free, gets to working on a book covering a horrific crime that took place in the backyard that left 4 dead and 1 young girl missing. As Ellison peels back layers,
they have layers.
The more he finds this isn't a typical murder case. Ellison discovers a box of Super 8 films, seemingly home movies, that are actually recordings of entire families being murdered in disturbing ritualistic ways. Believing he's tracking a serial killer, he seeks help from a local deputy and a professor specializing in cold activity, only to discover that Bughuul, a pagan deity who lures in children, consumes their soul, and uses filmed rituals as a gateway into the mortal world, is responsible for the murders. Meanwhile, Ellison's family's life is spiraling. His son is having terrible night terrors. You may not have seen this movie. I know you remember that shit. You cannot tell me you don't remember seeing that on the fucking trailer. That's just so good. His daughter is painting the missing girl, and Ellison himself is haunted by strange sounds, visions, and creepy encounters. Ellison abruptly moves his family back to their old house as a means to escape the terrifying situation. After moving back, Ellison finds the Super 8 films, now with extended footage showing the missing children committing the murders. He realizes too late that by moving, he sealed their fate. The film concludes with his daughter murdering the entire family as part of Bughuul's ritual and joining the deity in his dark realm and leaving the cursed films for the next family to find. J.M. Barrie's book Peter and Wendy, and later adapted into Peter Pan from Disney, follows the story of Wendy, John, and Michael, who are whisked away to Neverland by the mischievous Peter Pan, a boy who refuses to grow up. With the help of fairy dust from Tinkerbell, they learn to fly and join Peter on adventures alongside the Lost Boys. boys. In Neverland, they encounter mermaids, native inhabitants, and pirates, led by the vengeful Captain Hook, who's obsessed with defeating Peter. So Wendy takes on a motherly role for the Lost Boys, while Peter continues his carefree, adventurous existence, showing little interest in responsibility or growing up. As tensions rise between Peter and Hook, a final battle ensues, ending with Hook's defeat and death at the jaws of a ticking crocodile. Although Peter wants Wendy and her brothers to stay, they ultimately return home to their parents, leaving Peter behind in Neverland, forever the boy who never grows up. Sounds so whimsical, huh? Keep telling yourself that, because let me tell you, once we get into the point of origins, it's going to be everything but. So first we're going to look at the origins of these characters before we get into their tactics and why they act the way they act. So let's first look at Peter Pan. So the big inspiration for Peter Pan was Pan, the Greek god. So he ruled over the wild, shepherds, and the untamed side of nature. He's usually depicted as a half man, half goat with horns and furry legs. Pan typically roams forests and mountains, playing his iconic pan flute that, yes, that is named after him. And he's typically chasing after nymphs. So in Greek mythology, he's playful, mischievous, and a little chaotic, which is why he's often linked to sudden, overwhelming fear. The word panic actually comes from him. He's the Pan in panic. In art and literature, Pan often symbolizes freedom, fertility, instinct, and tension between civilization and wild. He's not just a nature god, though. He's the embodiment of everything raw, free-spirited, and unrestrained about life. The raw, primal nature of him typically associates him with sexual energy as well. He's known for his lustful pursuits of nymphs and mortals, often depicted as chasing or seducing them. So there is a crazy ass sculpture called the Satyr and the Goat that dates back to 1st century BCE that depicts him having relations with a goat. I'm not showing that here because it's super insane, but it's just kind of disturbing to think, like, this is our Disney character. You need to leave! So although not a direct influence to the story, I do want to talk about Piped Peter, as he does have some pretty eerie similarities to Peter Pan. In the old German folk tale, the town of Hamelin was overran with rats. So the townspeople hired a mysterious, colorfully dressed man named Piped Peter to get rid of him. So he played this magical pipe, and the rats followed him out of the city and into the river where they drowned. But when the townfolk refused to pay him, the piper took revenge and he played his pipe again, this time luring out the town's children. So depending on which version you read, the children were either led into a cave, spirited away to another land, or they drowned. Either way, they didn't see them again. So I don't know. I just thought it was kind of interesting, as there is a lot of similarities to them. Again, I wouldn't say that the entirety of Peter Pan was based on this, but I don't know, it just seems pretty damn similar if you ask. So Bughuul is a Babylonian pagan deity who is a lesser known brother of Moloch. So Bughuul consumes the souls of children, right? He lures them in by appearing in either some kind of image, film, drawing, or even music, and then will eventually compel them to murder their family as a blood ritual so he can come into our world and take them into his realm. According to a post that was made on the Sinister 2 Instagram page, Bughuul didn't always consume the soul, so Bughuul had stolen a sacrifice meant for Moloch, which was indeed burn children. And as a consequence for being too gluttonous, 'cause God forbid that he is gluttonous, Moloch shut his mouth with ash so that he may never taste flesh. That's all we know about this terrifying man's. Like I said, it's pretty short and to the point, and hang on to the point about him being gluttonous, because I have some thoughts about that later. So let's get into the elements and really dive into why Peter Pan and Bughuul are the same. Okay, so on to the elements of Peter Pan and Bughuul, right? So I was able to break down the methodology in which Peter Pan lures children into Neverland. So using this framework, we're going to break down Bughuul's tactics that, in my opinion, are nearly identical. I am going to let you know now. Peter Pan has Neverland and Bughuul has Netherland, okay? I will fuck it up. Please, please bear with me on it. Peter Pan has never, like Neverland, never, never. And Bughuul has nether, TH. The TH, not the V. What you say? The first step in the sequence of this. So they're watching over the children, right? So Peter Pan visits the kids' windows nightly to watch them sleep, which there is no explanation on why he does this. The sources that I found explain that he's embodying this innocent curiosity or longing for a domestic way of life. I would argue, though, it backs up my theory that he's not human, because even in Neverland, it never mentions him sleeping, so I don't know, it's just kind of sus that he's just out creeping around watching people sleep. Also, I do not give a fuck what someone's saying about curiosity or longing. If you're watching people sleep, that's weird. Especially for a kid who's anywhere between 10 to 13. Oh, absolutely not.
He's climbing in your windows, he's snatching your people up, so y'all need to hide your kids, hide your wife, and hide your husband, because
you know what happens when you're 10 to 13? You go through puberty. So why the fuck is your little wild and ass watching people sleep? That makes me super uncomfortable. I don't know. Let's look at Bughuul on the other hand. So from the second scene in Sinister 2, Dylan wakes up from this terrible nightmare that does happen to be of him carrying out this horrific murder of his family, to find Bughuul watching over him in the closet. So it just seems like for Bughuul, this is like kind of a selection process, as right after that honestly terrifying encounter, he ends up talking more and being exposed to the dead boy Milo, who plays a pretty predominant figure throughout the story. When looking at Sinister 1, you have Trevor, which is the older brother, that from the first night starts having these crazy ass night terrors, right? Like, do I gotta say it again? I know you fucking know about Later on, he's found recreating Bughuul's position in the family hanging out film. Trevor is a special case because I feel like with him being prone to night terrors, we're able to get a glimpse into this physical manifestation of this process. This is also a great place to preface that I believe that Trevor was the intended target for Bughuul, and then later resorted to Ashley because she had such an artsy nature about her, making it an easier target to influence her by. So the second step we are going to move into is the luring, right? So he's watching over the kids, kind of making the selection. Now he's starting to lure them out. So for Peter Pan, this child one night takes night stalking too far and enters into the kid's bedroom, right? And this is displayed as him losing his shadow, which his shadow went missing from a previous visit, mind you. Which I think takes on a really, really dark meaning, as it could be interpreted as him unable to control his shadow self while watching the kids, which feels disgusting to say. So we're just gonna move it on. When Wendy and Peter interact for the first time, he entices her with his adventurous, charming nature and lawless lifestyle, trying to get her to go away with him. This is interesting. Just like Trevor was an intended target, Wendy was the intended target for Peter too, but he ended up lucking out because he got 2 additional kids, John and Michael. looking into Bughuul, he does this luring by making the children have this reoccurring dream of the Super 8 murder film. In a really fucked up way. It is kind of like the fairy dust they need to fly. It's the start of this desensitization.
Huh?
Y'all. This desensitization process that causes them to disassociate the good from the bad. So in Sinister 2, we see the hold of this process on the dead children and how Dylan stands strong in not leaning into this ideology. Whereas in Sinister 1, we see Trevor drawing the hanged family on the whiteboard. I would infer this as luring in because obviously like it's a different POV, so this is kind of like a blurry area. Trevor does later state though that he just heard about this murder and it's something that everyone knows, so it is plausible that the dead children could have been getting him into this thought process already or having some kind of exposure to the third step here, which is going to be physical touch. So within Peter Pan, Wendy wakes up and she aids putting the shadow back on Peter. This encouragement of physical touch is important because it's allowing a mutual exchange of energy. So let's think about it for a second, like outside the cinematic realm. When you shake someone's hand or you give them a hug, for a brief moment, you're sharing an energy field. Seeing as we're talking about both of these characters being spiritual entities, it would make these small interactions have lasting implications because you're opening yourself up to that energy or aligning your thinking to that, making you unconsciously feed that connection. As with Bughuul, I couldn't find a concrete example of this physical touch within Sinister 1 for the kids. It is possible to argue that the night that Ashley saw Stephanie and she drew the hanging family with Bughuul on the wall, I mean, technically, Stephanie is an extension of Bughuul, so like, it checks out. It's just a little bit more of a reach, in my opinion. Whereas in Sinister 2, I feel like we do get a distinct physical touch example when Milo befriends Dylan and introduces him into watching the films. Again, assuming that Milo is an extension of Bughuul, these touch points are like anchors that lay the foundation for them to stay attuned to his and the dead children's presence. It's ultimately pulling them between this limbo that allows them to see Bughuul's realm as well as reality. It's a slow indoctrination into Bughuul's world. Later on in Sinister 2, we get a scene where Dylan sees blood on the church floor where one of these grisly murders took place, but only he's the one to see it. So this just further demonstrates being able to move between the two realms in that way. So on to step 4. So we're now in Neverland. So once Peter has the kids flying, he quite literally takes them out of the realm of reality and into Neverland. The darling children are soon met with the Lost Boys, which are a group of young boys who serve Peter as his home tribe, if you would. Okay, so with Bughuul, we have the Netherworld. So his way of transcending realms is a lot different and also a lot harder than Peter Pan's. So Bughuul relies heavily on the dead children to manipulate the target to undergoing this brainwashing and pushing them into making the next film. So we see this when Milo and the group continuously persuade Dylan to keep watching the films so that the nightmares will go away. However, this is just a way to keep baiting Dylan back in for more. At one point, Milo actually takes a personal approach and says, "Don't you want to watch mine? It's my favorite." As if there's some kind of genuine relationship built between the two. This just furthers my opinion on once the entity has a physical engagement, it'll continue that connection, which we see turn from a mutual relationship into a symbiotic one via Dylan's experience. So this concept is very similar to this is wild. I cannot believe this is coming out of my mouth right now. So this concept is very wild to think happy thoughts and you'll fly. So the more you're exposed to these thoughts and horrendous acts, the closer you are to committing them, which will put you through to Bughuul's realm, which is kind of like the hook of getting the kids to watch more. In Sinister 1, we see the completion of the ritual and the crossing of the two realms when Stephanie slays the Oswald family. We see Stephanie's complete submission into Bughuul and his realm. He physically manifests behind her as an extension or a shadow of her and brings her into the film footage. I do want to put a side note here. I believe that the Oswald kids, or at least Ashley, were exposed to the other films. We get two scenes where Ellison wakes up with the films playing in his office, and even though we get a clear shot of him locking the door, after seeing how the indoctrination works in Sinister 2, I don't think it's too far of a stretch to believe the dead children were exposing Ashley to the films by getting her back into bed before Ellison woke up. I feel like this could also explain the night that the dead kids were fucking with Ellison and making all those creaks around the house and stuff. Like, I feel like, I don't know. In my head, it just makes sense. Y'all tell me, I don't know, it just makes sense. So that's kind of like the overall process, right? So he watches them sleep. He lures them out. There's some kind of physical touch. He takes them into Neverland, Netherworld, right? But there is also two core similarities. Hey guys, editing self here. I realized that my second point actually ended up collapsing in on itself, so it's just one point. A core characteristic is never aging. So Peter is permanently the age of 10 to 13, just depending on what version you're reading. It's never explicitly said anywhere. Whereas the Lost Boys vary in numbers because they get killed and so on, and when they seem to be growing up, which is against the rules, Peter thins them out. And what does that sound like? You guessed it. He kills them. What does he do with the damn bodies? Oh my gosh, y'all. Wait. Because sirens, like, eat people, right? Like, what if he's throwing them to the mermaids? T. You don't think the pirates are eating them, right? Oh my. I feel like I need to turn the channel in my head because that. So there is another excerpt that explains the Lost Boys a little bit more, but in my opinion, this sounds a little bit more Bughuul-esque, if you would. It states that the Lost Boys are never born because they fall out of their prams when the nurse is looking the other way. I'm told they get older, but it happens very slowly, if at all. So first off, this is talking about Neverland being like a heaven for dead babies. Or if you're anything like me, you're gonna read between the lines, and so maybe these kids were on their way to heaven and got lost and ended up in this demented creature's playworld.
I could barely explain the nutty adventure I just went on, so I'm not going to. I don't want to talk about it.
So the last line is very similar to how Bughuul consumes the soul of children, as it is something that does take time. The dead children we see in both 1 and 2 are clearly decaying, but it's not at like a rapid pace. However, pause, don't pass go, because at the end of Sinister 2, we do see that Bughuul has the capability to consume them within seconds, but refrains from doing so. It just makes me wonder how often he feeds, because it's theorized that he has multiple lines going at once, right? So even though we've only seen 2, it's theorized that he has them all over the world, right? He is known for being gluttonous, right? So maybe at a certain point he's just collecting children as a fuck you to his brother. Like, hi guys, Future Self here. As I was doing editing on this video, I realized that this was a lot of information to just have jam-packed into one episode. So I'm going to be breaking it into 2 parts, just so it's a little bit easier to follow. I mean, I was even getting confused with like everything going on it. So part one, we clearly covered how Bughuul and Peter Pan, pull kids in with similar tactics. Going into the second part, we're going to be covering why Sinister is a tragedy and how Bughuul used the same tactics we talked about here to pull Ellison into the netherworld. So I am super excited for y'all to see it. I've been working on this video for way too long now, so I'm just happy that y'all get to see it. Please do not forget to let me know what y'all think down in the comments. And do not forget to like and subscribe, please. It definitely helps out the channel a lot. And yeah, I'll be seeing you in the next video. Bye.